Good morning, everyone. How are we? My name's Robin Hoyle, and welcome to Olympia. Welcome to the World of Learning Summit, which is sponsored by whoever makes those hard hats that are everywhere around the sites this week. I've no idea who makes those, but clearly they've got some kind of deal going on. Welcome to the event. My responsibility over the course of the next couple of minutes is first of all to do tea and toilets. Tea and toilets is complicated. Take notes. So first and foremost, the loos are by seminar room 2, and they are down the stairs. Those of you who would prefer level access, there are some by the delegate lounge, which are also available for those with disabilities. Delegate lounge is where lunch is served. Free coffee is in the VIP lounge. These are different spaces. You have a map. Use your map. Not only use your map to find your way around the place from here to room 2, which is at the other side, but also around the exhibition. And there are 4 separate seminar theatres out in the exhibition hall. There's some really interesting things going on there as well, out with the programme for the conference. And don't forget that this event is not viable without our exhibitors. So take some time out to visit some of those people as well. I'll do some more instructions later, but that's enough for now. So now it's just our opportunity to introduce ourselves. So I'll start with these people who are just coming in at the back. No, we won't. What I'm going to do is, please, I'm just going to ask you to say, why are you here, to somebody with whom you have not braved public transport disasters this morning, okay? So I would like you, please, to find somebody who you do not know and say, this is me, this is why I'm here, and most importantly, this is what I want to leave with. Okay? So that's your job. You have 90 seconds, and it starts now. Okay. That is your 90 seconds up, folks. Doesn't last long, does it? Now, you have now each been entrusted with the goals and objectives of somebody else in this audience. Having been entrusted with them, I am now giving you the responsibility to make sure that those people get what they want out of the next day or 2 days, okay? So check in with them, have a conversation with them, make sure that they're on track. And we're going to start the session. There'll be more information coming to you at the end of this about some of the more labyrinthine arrangements for running an event at Olympia, which I will share with you at the end of this session. But it gives me the greatest of pleasure to welcome a couple of people talking about AI. We had a very long conversation about, do you think we can avoid AI? on a learning and development conference in 2024. Can we get away with it? We decided we couldn't. So we're going to have a conversation about AI, but more importantly, we're going to have a conversation about how AI is not just going to change some of the things we do in learning, but how AI is going to change the way we do things across the wider world of work. It gives me great pleasure to introduce to you in a moment Trish Uhl. Trish Uhl is from Owl's Ledge, which is a consultancy based in Chicago. She is an executive director in charge of some of the areas around AI and transformation within one of the top financial institutions within the US. And she has been engineering stuff at the forefront of learning and development for a number of years. She is going to be joined and preceded on stage by Detlef Holt. Detlef Holt works for Hoffmann La Roche, where he is the global lead for people and organizational transformation. He's also somebody who's worked within the world of technology, AI, and the intersection between people and organizational capability and technology for a number of years, both within La Roche, within other organizations, within Europe and within the US, and within academia. So please, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage, Detlef Holt.
Good morning. How are you doing? Great. Let's jump in with a quick look at what's going on. Artificial intelligence is everywhere. And the perspective I wanted to bring to you is actually at the interface of humans, which is us, and technology. The reason is that my background is in psychology, but I have been working in learning development for 25 years within the corporate setting, but also as a consultant before. So when you look at the fact that IA is everywhere, one of the things I want you to think about is that most recently, I reached out to a lot of people internally within Roche, colleagues in learning, colleagues in data science, colleagues in informatics, and we try to figure out how to get our head around the evolution of artificial intelligence and ChatGPT in learning. So I met Johannes, and when Johannes and I talked about half an hour about what's going on, I was questioning why we don't focus more on the learners, because a lot of the learning is really happening outside of L&D. It's not necessarily driven by teams in L&D. And the one thing he said is that currently we seem to be 4 minutes ahead of our customers. So if we have little time to prepare and think about the impact this new technology might have on our field, we better prepare. So my own journey started about a year ago, and I've been posting on LinkedIn, getting my head around what's going on, reading a lot of posts, and I found the one on the left-hand side, which really illustrates the fact that, yes, ChatGPT is omnipresent. Artificial intelligence has been around, but fortunately, we still have some human skills which differentiate us from technology. On the right-hand side, I then went internally our company and tried to find out who is looking at this topic already and how our people are approaching this. And as a company, we moved into community-based learning. We moved into chapters. We changed our entire setup. And we have about 2,000 people currently in one of the hundreds of chat rooms we have who are exchanging use cases on large language models and ChatGPT. So I went into this, asked the question if anyone is in learning, and found that a number of people are exploring and trying to experiment with ChatGPT already. That was my starting point internally. And then my daughter said, if you really want to do something with ChatGPT, one of the things you should be looking at is being kind and thanking ChatGPT in the dialogue. And so I did. And the response I got actually was appreciation. And the assumption is that if you're kind in the dialogue with this new technology, you might get better outcomes. So here's what I'd like to show you and talk about in the next 30 minutes. I want to open up and have a quick look at the evolution of us humans, but also technology over the last 150 years, very briefly, to show you what is currently happening and how present Gen IA is taking up our thinking and our ways of doing in learning as well. Then I want to have a quick look at examples of learning and development and the conversations that are happening from the consultant perspective, from our internal perspective, and then show you actually 3 use cases from teams inside of Roche who are trying to get their head around the topic as such. And then wrap up with my intent of crystal ball, looking into a potential evolution of how artificial intelligence might impact our field and what that means for us. Now, keep in mind one thing. There's going to be quite some details in the slides. I just want to give you a flavor of what's going on so you can follow up afterwards. And the beauty is that Trish, who's sitting in the back there, is going to build on a lot of the topics I'm touching on, because we as a company, my colleagues and myself, we're really in this beginner experimenting stage of making sense of what's going on with artificial intelligence and learning, while Trish will give you a perspective which is much more advanced because she's setting up her team in a completely different way already. So warm up. 4 questions, and I'd love you to answer really by standing up briefly. Who has already used ChatGPT yourself? Please stand up if you have. Fantastic. Oh, that's the majority of you. Great. Second question. Please stand. Who's curious about the potential of Gen IA? Yeah, probably the same people. Third question. Who feels equipped to use ChatGPT? Right? Yeah, that's how I feel. That's exactly how I feel as well. And the last question is, and for me this is the most important question, who can tell why humans are still better than ChatGPT at this stage? There you go. Let me show you the qualities we have. I Googled, I came up myself with a list, and then I asked ChatGPT the same question. And the thing is that we have a lot of qualities that differentiate us ourselves. Language, consciousness, the ability to reflect, the ability to make sense and to interpret outcomes that we get from something like ChatGPT. Now, if those are the qualities we have, I just wanted to make sure that it's worth your time. Can you please confirm you're human? All right, a bit more complicated, that one. We have to do this all the time, right? So there's technology and there's the human part of it. If you go back 200 years, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, I just want to give you a flavor of what we're talking about. The evolution from the first industrial revolution to the second one took about 100 years, 120 years. From the first to the third one, 220 years. The most recent one has taken not even 10 years. And then if you look at the evolution of artificial intelligence, has been around since the 50s. So we're talking about 70 years, really, that we have been experimenting and using IA, and it had its cycles of ups and downs. And what's similar across all of these revolutions is that it was always about the human-technology interface. It was always about productivity and efficiency. And then it was always a level of uncertainty where people lost their jobs and new jobs were created. What's different this time is the speed, the huge amount of access of information, which is overwhelming sometimes, and the scale of the change. Now here's how long it took actually to get from the use of an app like Netflix 20 years ago to, and I know this is small, but the use of ChatGPT for 1 million users. I mean, look at this. The speed is just incredible. And if you go back in history, the adoption of the phone took about 900 months. That's almost 10 years. ChatGPT for 100 million users, same amount, it took 2 months. So the speed is just overwhelming. And if you go into the innovation cycle, we are at a hype for ChatGPT. Everyone is trying to use it. And one of the things to consider that is that this hype of having 10 or 50 posts every day on LinkedIn can be overwhelming. And the one point that we all try to get right this year, I think, is to show the value of it. This is true for every industry. It's true for not only learning, but particularly for learning development teams. I think this is going to be an important year. So if you asked the L&D leaders themselves, this is from November on the left-hand side. The poll basically says that the vast majority of L&D leaders at the time had not used ChatGPT yet, and about 90% said that they didn't have a proper training on it. This poll is from January, and in January the picture is quite similar. There's still a lot of people who have not been properly trained or have not been using ChatGPT on a daily basis. And then if you look at the higher level of where CEOs are, where your bosses are actually as well, who drive your company, there is 50% of CEOs who were not encouraging, and this is data from the second part of 23. So at the time, there was no encouragement to use ChatGPT, partly because maybe there were no policies in place, and maybe because there was not enough resources to even access it and think about it. The vast majority of people seem to be in the middle, which is like this experimenting field to try to find use cases. And the few innovators, particularly in marketing, in healthcare, they are already able to show some value of this phase of experimenting. Now, the good news for us is that organizations begin to think about much more focused, and yours might do as well. They want to have goals on the use of Gen IA and artificial intelligence. They need more literate workers who know exactly what the domain includes and what the value can be, and they need more skilled workers. So we as a field really have an opportunity here to contribute. If you look at the potential itself, I just want to show you a few numbers. And that is on the left-hand side. We talk about 480 billion only for the public sector. That's potentially, that is the potential of Gen IA. And BCG did a study where they showed that any task we can think about, analysis, design, development, can really be augmented by ChatGPT and show that there is productive value. Josh Burson showed at the EdTech market, and as you can see, we talk about 14 billion only, which is another indication of the potential of it. If you apply the same thing to L&D and HR, here's a few examples where people look for use cases and they see the opportunity for efficiency gains, more accuracy in the data we're using, speed, personalization, you name it. All those examples of benefits that we are anticipating to get. Now, this is about us. The data from McKinsey shows that, particularly in learning, particularly in education, particularly in training, we used to automate only physical work activities. Today, it's about knowledge workers. It's about us. And the data the assumption is here that 50% of what we're currently doing might be automated in the future. This is about us. So the question is, how can we use that potential within L&D? What I want to show you here is a step into the current conversations from the consultant perspective, from the internal perspective, but also from experts' viewpoints on how we can unleash that potential. Let's start with a quick exercise. So learning is about using modalities, thinking about media, and that can be text, it can be video. Here's an example of pictures that Ethan Mollick put out recently. One of the pictures is the original. 3 are created by AI. The question to you is, which one is the original? Any guesses? 1, 3, 2, 2, I see 2, 1, 2, 3, 3, 3, 2. Okay. Actually, it's number 2. And the people who were guessing, they were like 40% thought it was number 2, and then it was a mix of all of it. The point I want to make here is that the modalities available today and emerging incredibly quickly about use of audio, text, video, pictures is just amazing. And it's getting better and better. This is from about a month ago, 2 months ago. Every month you see the evolution and the quality of what we're able to do with it, potentially. There's a few use cases, and there's many use cases that are looked at, and usually what we do is we try to align it along the life cycle. So all of us are trained on thinking about analyzing, designing, developing, implementing, and then evaluating. And here's one example from J.D. Dillon, who put together some ideas on how we could use Gen IA. I don't want to go into details because you get the slides afterwards, and I have a collection of my own use cases I also want to show you, just to give you a flavor. So Egle Vinascaute has recently put down this graph on the right, on the left-hand side. Same idea, the learning life cycle and how you can use ChatGPT to improve what we're doing, to automate and to augment it. And her curve was showing that the majority of us seem to use it mainly for some analysis and a lot of design, and maybe thinking about content as well. In orange, I put down my reality and what I've observed over the last year, really. I think that a lot of us are also looking into discovery, trying to use data, maybe just use a few documents that we have from a process, and then put it into ChatGPT and see what comes out of it. And where we're trying to get our head around is how to make this valuable. So I see more of the use in discovery and some of it in follow-up. And the future might be that we're much more able to generate data and leverage it actually, and then be much better in the transfer and the evaluation of all the learning solutions that we're developing. The most prominent ones I've seen myself is really that a number of my colleagues are trying to develop AI tutors, coaches, or they're using it as a co-pilot. I'm working on something and then ChatGPT helps me to come up with some ideas, and then I refine it and I start asking questions to make it better. Other people I've seen, they're all talking about efficiency gain. How can we automate part of what we're doing? And then the third part is, because we are a community-based organization, we moved in a chapter model, which is much flatter, and we have hundreds of communities. We are using it for collaboration really, and problem solving and knowledge exchange. So basically what people are doing is they're using ChatGPT, they're taking up some of the input, and what they're learning in the community, they're trying to nurture again and train the algorithm to make it better. Here's again an example of the mapping. Again, same idea, no details, just to show you that it's either by looking at the market and seeing what kind of tools come up, or experimenting yourself and then seeing in what part of the learning life cycle you can actually have an impact and create value. So you go into details. Here's 2 slides on the use cases I wanted to share with you. The green ones are the ones that we are looking at or already using. You see on the left-hand side that there's a focus on content, some of it design, some of it is performance support. I find the performance support particularly interesting because it might help us to finally move away from the idea of creating programs and courses to be much closer to where the work actually happens with some tutoring or coaching. I think that's an obvious thing that we're all trying out. So you see the use cases here, and no surprise that vendors are looking at integrating artificial intelligence in their platforms as well. This slide is more at the strategy level, as you can see, the engagement and analytics and technology. So there's an operational part we might be able to get better at, and then there's the more strategic part. You pull all of this together, it's really the invitation for you to look at what open artificial intelligence is offering. OpenIA has the chats. Who has used this already? If you tried it out, you can access actually the GPT store. You can create your own, you can customize it, and you can experiment with it. And there's literally hundreds of possibilities. One example from us, we are using it to teach negotiation skills. So you have to train ChatGPT on this, of course, and we're using it for leadership dialogue related to one of the programs we have. And then there's more resources out there. This is other examples, and you find the links to this actually also in the slide deck. Phil Hardman, who had the keynote last time at the World of Learning, recently put this out, and this is a watch out, I think, for all of us. What she put out was, she said, it took me 3 seconds to create a course design. And then she confessed actually that it took her hours to come up with the right prompting. Learning prompting is really a skill that we need to get better at. And some of the people responded and said they also used it, but sometimes, in the stage we are, it might not be worth the time, because it takes much longer to learn the prompting and the dialogue than actually have a course design, which then, in the end, is not even perfect. So this is choices of where to invest and where to skip. One of the watch-outs certainly is that all of us have constraints and barriers in even accessing and thinking about scalability of ChatGPT in the future. Some of it is related to the output. The quality of the output is always sometimes overwhelming, and sometimes it's just not good enough. We ourselves have a new Roche policy that was put in place about a week ago, and we're not allowed to record meetings anymore. Now think about that. If you can't record meetings, that would be perfect input to train an algorithm. But right now we can't do that, and we need to figure it out differently. So IT constraints, legal constraints, there's compliance issues, data privacy, many reasons why we might be hesitant in actually thinking about scaling it. And then last but not least, some of the people might not be ready. The skills might not be here, and then it's a question of cost and time. You need licenses to use that technology, and you need also have the time to explore it and get better at it. We can't do everything on our own, so really it's about having also partnership with vendors, and some of our colleagues have already thought about the questions we need to ask to pick the right vendors and the right partners for this. And then, last but not least, our roles might be changing. So if you think about the roles we could be playing, on the left-hand side, you see the impact we could be looking at in organizations. And that is more strategic role of helping people to understand ChatGPT and GenAI in general, and then how to use it. It's also about safeguarding people. We call this responsible AI. The facts about ethics, the facts about that the output might not be accurate. And on the right-hand side, by helping people to build skills, we can definitely advocate and also become the experts, the go-to people actually in the company for the use of ChatGPT in education and learning. Now, I'm going to skip this part because Trish is going to cover it much more. The starting point has to be that we build the language. We build our own understanding of ChatGPT much more sophisticatedly. And I want to go into Teams is another aspect, but I want to go into actually the use cases from our company because it might show you where we are in the maturity. Trish, as I said, is much more advanced. We might be in a stage, you are as well, experimenting, making sense of things, and trying it out. So let me show you those examples. Yeah, I know, I'm looking at time as well. So a few things we built. First of all, there's a strategic initiative called Galileo. We are a science company, and as a science company, you need to get around data. The organizational level, apart from the initiative, there's a hub everyone can access. There are expert teams you can talk to. Think about maybe building your network out of IT, data experts, and AI experts, And then there's a lot of communication and training. 2 examples. We have training on how to use ChatGPT specifically. And then in the communities, as I said, there's a huge amount of exchange. So if you can foster that type of exchange, the speed of learning is just accelerated. We have our own ChatGPT internally, that's behind firewalls. anyone can access it and anyone can use it, and then you get advice and coaching to become better at it. And then, as I said, there's lots of training available for people, for everyone in the company. So there's a Digital and Data Academy. One example that we are either customizing for ourselves or leveraging is focus on data and AI ethics. How to responsibly use that technology. So, use cases. First one is very simple. Our colleagues in IT have their own learning team, and one of the things they have been doing is creating a training on the use of ChatGPT by lowering the anxiety of people. Because there's a lot of people who still don't exactly know how to approach this. So they give perspective, they show how to use it, and then they also train people on prompting. And one of the use cases they shared with me is that all of us will be in a situation where we have an RFP from a vendor. And the way they use it in the training is actually that you might have an assumption about a vendor you want to pick, that it's the right vendor with the right expertise. And ChatGPT can help you actually to validate your assumptions for an RFP. I thought that's a very relevant use case for us with regards to value. And then there's a task force of a learning team that's in the business. Their starting point, this is people and culture. So it's in HR. Because we have people in HR who are learning and people in the business. They did check the maturity level through an assessment of the knowledge people have in their teams. And their only aim was to have a common understanding of what ChatGPT is and the potential it has. Reason being that some of our colleagues have not even looked at it yet. Others were much more advanced. They defined a few principles, which was really focusing on hands-on practices and examples. And then they already prepared for the stage where they want to scale some of the experiments. Oops. Let me move here. And so the way this, the way they approach this is really, they were just focusing on how you can augment the current project work. So for example, can ChatGPT help me with creating personas? Could it help us to have a better understanding of how to design the learner journey? Very practical examples that everyone can talk about and discuss. And then the other thing is that we do a lot of performance consulting. Could ChatGPT help us to get a better understanding of the customers and then improving our production? And the last was, what can be our role in L&D to be the catalyst for the dialogue around ChatGPT and the use of it? So that was their focus, very down to earth, very at the beginning, and before you even think about scaling experiments. Second use case in the business, a bit more elaborate. That team actually wanted to make sure that whatever they do is aligned with a strategy, and then also the team is better prepared. So they wanted to find tools, resources, explore internally what's available, and then collect experiments and examples to make them available to everyone, and see how that fits with the 24 strategy. Oops. This is their analysis of focusing on 3 criteria. What could be more efficient? What could make us more productive? And what could make us more creative in using ChatGPT? You see the pillars on top. There's one around supporting strategic initiatives. Okay, thanks. There's some analysis on using it for team excellence and some for scientific leadership. Basically, the message here is that they saw potential in everything. They collected use cases. They looked at the technology, and mainly what's available internally and could be leveraged, because our budgets for L&D are also constrained, like yours might be. They looked at responsible IA, gave some recommendations, and then came up with some observations where we're back to the conversation we might have had 10 years ago. We do need more data literacy. We need to have better data available if you really want to leverage ChatGPT, because the input is absolutely essential. And the second part is, in your teams, that might be the case as well. Everyone is saving their learning solutions for customers separately. So you actually need to have a shared repository to make that available to ChatGPT afterwards. It's the only way to get better at having input that gives you better output. So their recommendation was continue exploring, build a community so we can learn from each other, and then enable the individuals by upskilling them with specific training. Nothing out of this world that you can see. They're also at a starting phase of exploring how to best approach this. I'm not going to jump to my crystal ball because I got a sign here. And so you've seen that as a company, our level of maturity is really at the beginning. We have a number of teams, they've been looking at this, they're trying to head around, they collect use cases, and you might be in the similar stage. The question now is, what do you do with it in the future? So my crystal ball number one question is, if you take the Wheel of Fortune, which one would you pick? And the question is, if you spin it, will your job still be around in 10 years, or 5 years even, or 2 years? So to best prepare, you see that on the left-hand side, the technical skills are the ones that are relevant. On the right-hand side, other jobs are declining. So maybe there is an opportunity for us to link our expertise and our skills to the evolution of ChatGPT and focus on human skills. Because it's not about the technology really, it's about people's ability to use it, to set up a dialogue, to prompt and ask the right question. This is where we can get the value from. So our focus on these skills will be as relevant. And last but not least, if you put everything together, there's 4 aspects I think are essential. One is understanding, taking the time really to get a head around how artificial intelligence works, how ChatGPT works, what we can use it for, what kind of risks are associated to it, and how can we prepare us and our teams. Maybe one of these is inspiring for you. I particularly like surfacing implicit knowledge, because I think the most important asset is really in our people's head, and so far we have not been good in using it to create our own learning solutions. So my invitation is to prepare your team, prepare yourself. There's lots of resources out there you can tap in, and many of them are for free and open source. And here's my own curated list of people I follow on the left-hand side, and then stuff I scan on a regular basis just to understand what's going on and making sense out of it. So my question to you is, if we might be afraid that Gen IA and artificial intelligence is maybe getting better at one day that we are, you listen to Elon Musk, he say another 3 years and we might be obsolete. But then you listen to Steve Wozniak, the co-founder of Apple, that's a little bit more reassuring. AI might achieve human-like intelligence the moment it's able to make coffee in an unfamiliar kitchen. Now for me, that is quite reassuring, and so I leave you with the question I started with. If we are 4 minutes ahead of our customers, how will you use that time to prepare yourself and your teams? Thank you.